All right, it's been raining for like a week straight. And now that it's done raining, it's gonna be 95 degrees and up, 100 degrees for the next week and a half straight. Welcome to Alabama weather. Anywho, today we've got Cody's 2014 Jeep SRT8 over here. It's got the 6.4 all-wheel drive. If you guys have followed along here, we took this thing on Rocky Mountain Race Week. It's the third year that we've taken it on Race Week. The second year, we had some transfer case issues with just spinning the rear wheels. It ended up being the transfer case pump. The pump on the side of the transfer case kind of went bad. We replaced the pump. Changed the fluid. Then everything was fine after that. And then this year, about a month or two ago, whenever we went, about day 3, we started getting the same issue again. The rear wheels would spin when we tried to launch. The first day or two, it was fine. And then I think the third or fourth day, somewhere in there, we started losing the transfer case grip again, I guess you could say it. We're pretty sure it's got 117,000 miles on it. We're pretty sure the transfer case is just slipping front to rear. So it's just letting way too much power go to the back wheels and not engaging the front wheels like it should. We think the lockup might be the issue there with the clutches inside. Maybe they're slipping, something along those lines. We know the pump is only a year old, so it shouldn't be the pump, shouldn't have any issue there. So what Cody did, he actually found a transmission and transfer case pretty cheap online, and they're pretty low mileage. So he went ahead and picked those up, and the plan is to go ahead and swap the transfer case. This one's got like, I don't know, 50,000 less miles on it, so it should be in a lot better shape. Came out of a running, driving vehicle with no issues, as far as we can tell. Everything on it looks good. So today I'm gonna attempt to swap these transfer cases, and since it's already, sun's going down, might carry over into tomorrow a little bit. So I've got the Jeep over here, just me. Cody's at home, and congratulations to Cody, because he just had his first baby, him and his wife. So you're looking at a proud new uncle now. So I told Cody I'd try to swap this transfer case for him and see if I can get it going. So that's what I'm going to start on today. I couldn't really find a lot of videos on this on YouTube. It should be pretty similar to some other Jeeps. But anywho, I couldn't find an SRT specific video on changing this transfer case. So I'm going to kind of wing it, but also try to do it right and make sure everything goes right back where it came off of. I think I'm also going to swap the pump that we bought last year to this replacement transfer case, just so the pump is less than a year old and we have a lower mileage transfer case. That'll also give him a spare transfer case pump that he can have, along with a spare trans and transfer case. And then later down the road, if he wants to get these built, he can absolutely get them built, and then we'll swap them in there, have a built drivetrain, which I think eventually he'd like to do. But today we're gonna try to just start swapping the transfer case. So let's go ahead and get into that. All right, crawling under here. Obviously there's the transfer case. It looks like the exhaust doesn't necessarily have to come out. From the initial inspection, it looks like it just goes right around the side of it. We got plenty of room on the other side. We do have, if I can hold my phone right, it looks like there's a mount right here that we'll have to take loose. Yeah, so right above that mount, it looks like that's where it bolts to the transmission. Kind of hard to see because I'm so smushed under the Jeep. Here's the pump, of course, right here at the back. So we just gotta unplug that. To take the rear drive shaft off, it's under this heat shield. So we're gonna have to go around and take this heat shield off. So the first thing I'm gonna do is soak these bolts with some WD-40 or something like that. They're pretty rusty. I don't want any of them to snap. So I'm gonna see if I can wiggle this heat shield off, or at the very minimum, just get all the bolts loose and slide it back to where I can get to these drive shaft bolts. Front drive shaft is right here. I don't know how well you can see that on the camera.
let's get some light in here. So those bolts are also gonna have to come out. It looks like we're gonna have to take this cross member right here off. So I'll end up taking this shield off and getting a jack with some wood under the transmission to support that, and just trying to clear out everything around the transfer case before I unhook any drive shafts or anything like that. I just want to be able to put my eyes on everything that's coming off before I start removing stuff. So let's get some WD-40 and see if we can get this heat shield loose, and then we'll see what we need to get this cross member and this tray out of here as well. All right, and I know it's aggravating to look at a view like this, but I'm pretty much laying flat under the Jeep. This heat shield, it's got 4 11mm nuts sitting on studs. So you remove those 4 nuts, like I said, 11mm. You can slide this heat shield back out of the way. This does have an aftermarket catback exhaust on it. I don't know if it's different for the OEM exhaust, but for me currently, I think from here forward is factory, so you should be able to get away with just unbolting that, sliding that out of the way, and that lets us get to our rear drive shaft bolts here. So I've got my eyes on those now. I should be able to knock those off. Absolute worst case scenario, you could just unhook the catback, drop it down, and that would give you enough room to get this heat shield out of the way. Or if you're like me, you would just wad this up and throw it in the trash. But it's not mine, so I'll put it back. So I've got my eyes on that. I've got my eyes up here on the front one. Like I said, I am gonna put a jack with a board under the transmission and see if I can get this cover and cross member off next. All right, so kind of strange. I've got a jack with a block of wood under the transmission. The transmission pan is actually plastic, so I'm really scared to put any pressure on this thing. I checked the other transmission, it's the same way. But what I did is I went ahead and got the piece of wood and I brought it as far back toward the transfer case as I could. So this mount right here is on the, it's on the back of the transmission holding it in the vehicle. So I wanted to come as far back as I could to kind of pivot. I don't want to put it very far toward the front because more weight's going to be on the jack here. So I brought it as far back as I could. I barely put any pressure on this board right here. I'd like to try and get this out. I don't think I'm doing that yet. I'd like to get the drive shafts unhooked, but at least I've got something under the transmission. It shouldn't be that much weight. The only saving grace I have here, I don't think it's going to damage it just because I'm on the edge of the plastic where most of the support's going to be. That's just a really dumb idea, but I've got this other transmission over here with a pan under it. So if this one is damaged, I could replace it, but I don't think it's going to get damaged just because I need just something under it holding it up. I think with the wood and as far back as we are, it should be okay. It's not holding up the weight of the vehicle, just basically keeping the transmission from coming down at all. I think that's going to be okay there. Should be, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm going to start by unplugging this plug on the transfer case motor to get that undone, get it out of the way, and then I'll start working on getting the front drive shaft unhooked, wheels off the ground, so it is okay. It's not going to roll anywhere. And then after that's done, then I'll get back here to the, where did it go? There it is. To the rear drive shaft and see if I can get those undone. All right, so small update. There's a couple plugs. I've got 3 plugs that I actually undid off of this thing. You'll kind of see where they're hooked up at if you're doing it yourself. One's for the motor here. There's another one up next to the drive shaft somewhere, and another one a little bit further up right there. So all those are unplugged and out of the way. I went ahead and started working on the rear drive shaft. It was a bit of a pain because it was so rusty, but I was able to actually get that unhooked. I didn't have to do the carrier bearing. I didn't have to drop the exhaust. I just got it unhooked from right there at the front of the rear drive shaft. The next thing I'm gonna do is start working on the front drive shaft, getting it loose from the transfer case. And then I'll kind of see what I need to do with the cross member, or whatever needs to happen there. I know that mount is on the rear of the transmission, so all these bolts around the transfer case need to come out. I don't know if I have to pull this yet, but I will show you a little trick to get this drive shaft to spin without the Jeep actually being in neutral, just so you can get all the way around to all the bolts. I'll show you that real quick. All right, if you look inside the Jeep, in the center console, there's actually this little lever right here, if my phone will focus on it. You take a little pin, slide that to where it says unlock, and then you pull this all the way up. It's actually going to pull this little cable right here, if you can see that. And that cable will actually release the drive shafts where you can spin it with the Jeep still off in park without it running or anything like that. This Jeep obviously won't let you shift out of park unless the Jeep is running. It's I guess a safety feature on these Jeeps, but they do have that release handle there. And that'll let you rotate the drive shafts to get to whatever bolts you need to get to. So onto the front drive shaft now. All right, to kind of help get to the front drive shaft and all the bolts holding the transfer case to the transmission, went ahead and took the cross member off. There was a piece over here, there was a piece over there. Took those off first. Made sure nothing was connected. I don't think anything else was connected to it. Then there's 3 bolts on each side. This is the cross member, and just beware that is pretty heavy, especially that side over there, the passenger side. Pretty heavy unit, but it doesn't look like the plastic pan is bending or deformed or anything like that, so I think it's going to be okay. The biggest thing is I just got to get this drive shaft disconnected and start taking all the bolts out of the transfer case. And I think once that is done, this thing should be able to come out. And I've got another jack that I can slide under here and put under it once I get the last few bolts out to kind of help me bring it out of here. All right, it's actually the next day. Last night I went ahead and got the front drive shaft unhooked and pulled out of there. So that's both drive shafts out. That's the front one. It's the rear one right there. And then when I got to the, it's pretty tight under here. When I got to the transfer case bolts, there's 8 of them, and they're actually like a Torx head bolt. Let me grab one real quick. So it's that style of head bolt. I actually did not have any of those sockets here. So today when I got off work, I went ahead and stopped by and got some. Pretty hard to get to the top 2 bolts. There's 8 total. There's 1, 2, 3 on this side right here. There's 1 more at the top, same on the other side. 3 pretty easy to get to, and 1 at the very top. So I had to use like 2 swivels and 3 different extensions on the ratchet, but not too bad. I just had to come on back pretty far to reach up in there and get those. They're not torqued down way too tight, so my 3/8 drive ratchet actually got them loose. But now I've got drive shafts loose, all the bolts out of the transfer case. I've got these drive shafts just zip tied out of the way for now, just to keep them from getting stuck under the transfer case when I'm pulling it out. I don't want to damage anything. You might can see it right there, that little shiny part. There's a vacuum hose on that I've pulled out of the way. And then on this side, oh God, there's a little bracket on the transfer case here. I'm not going to take it off, but I did take this vacuum line loose. It actually goes into the factory exhaust here. Not entirely sure what that's for, but I went ahead and unhooked that, and I believe that's everything. What I'm going to do now is get a jack underneath this transfer case. It does have to slide toward the rear of the vehicle, off of the output shaft of the transmission. So I'm going to start trying to wiggle this thing loose. I'm not going to record that because I'm probably going to need both hands. I'm under here by myself, and hopefully I don't drop this thing on my face. So here we go. All right, here's where we're at. Transfer case is out. This is the one that came out of Cody's Jeep. That's the one that's going in there. I checked all the numbers that are written on each one of them. They look the same. Everything seems to be in the same spot, same amount of splines. Should be good. Now, of course, Cody still has the heat shields on it that I'm going to swap over. It's also got this little bracket. This is the hose that went to the exhaust. That's moving over.
And we're also gonna take this new pump because it's pretty much a year old, and we're gonna move it to that one. So I'm gonna swap all that stuff. Side note, in order to pull that transfer case back, because you have to slide it off of the output shaft of the transmission, I was hitting the factory, I think it's called a down pipe or a mid pipe on the driver's side. So I went ahead and disconnected the catback exhaust, and I was gonna pull the driver's side mid pipe, down pipe off. It's got 2 nuts up by the exhaust manifold. 2 bolts, 2 nuts. The nuts are held on with little metal brackets. Basically this little thing right here, if you can see that, this is like paper thin metal that's supposed to hold the nut on the back. Obviously very rusty, but to be honest, very flimsy material. Like, this is aluminum can type stuff. Both of those brackets bolt off when I tried to pull the bolts out. So the nut on the back spins, and the nut is also a square. It is not a hexagon for a socket. So I really didn't have a good way to get that off of there. So what I had to do, there's a straight shot on this mid pipe right here. There's another straight section there. So I cut it there with the intention of putting an exhaust clamp or something on it. It's gonna be temporary. We'll eventually get some test pipes, some aftermarket mid pipes to put in. Those are where the huge catalytic converters are on each side of the Jeep. So eventually they will be replaced. I was this close to not calling Cody and just doing it, but I went ahead and called Cody. He gave me the thumbs up. He understands it's got to come out to get the transfer case swapped. It's got to be done no matter what. So I went ahead and cut that off. So transfer case is out. I'm going to swap everything over and start reinstalling everything, pretty much just the reverse order of getting everything out. First thing to do, jack up the transfer case, slide it onto the output shaft of the transmission, get all the bolts in, then we'll start reattaching the rear drive shaft, front drive shaft, get the wiring harness put on, get everything put on. The last thing, and it's going to be tomorrow because it's pretty late and everywhere's closed right now, I've got to go get an exhaust clamp. So the last thing to go on will be this piece of the exhaust here. But everything else should be able to go on tonight. So hopefully I'll have another update here soon. I'm going to keep working and see how far I can get. So, all right, I can't even remember the last update on this video, but it's the next day. Obviously, got the rest of the Jeep back together, transfer case in, all the bolts in, drive shafts in, cross member back on, repaired the exhaust, put the heat shield back on, everything back under the car. Went ahead and did an oil change, filled up the transfer case with fluid. So yeah, driving it around now, it seems to be doing fine. I'm watching all the temps, watching all the pressures, everything looks good, which they should because it was just a transfer case, but it's good to check everything. But overall, doing pretty good. So that was my experience changing a transfer case. I'm posting this mainly because I haven't seen anybody post one yet, but if you need help changing a transfer case, there you go. So I think that's going to do it for this video. See you guys in the next one. Bye.